Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're doing something really fascinating. We are grabbing a magnifying glass and zooming in on a highly partisan piece of political commentary, a recent video from NERC News covering the 2024 election. Now, my role here isn't to agree or disagree with the politics. Instead, as your guide, we're going to neutrally break down exactly how this media source constructs its arguments, how they use rhetoric, and how they shape a very specific narrative for their audience. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're going to see how they build their case piece by piece. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this because NERC News doesn't start with a conservative talking point. Nope, they hook you right out of the gate with this exact quote. They highlight a clip of an unnamed Democratic representative speaking on CNN saying, "We lost every swing state. Democrats know why we lost." By starting right there, the host sets up this foundational premise for the entire video. The idea that the political left suffered this massive, undeniable defeat, and that deep down they actually know the real reasons why, even if they refuse to admit it out loud. It's a classic rhetorical strategy, right? Using the opposing side's own words to validate your critique.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the DNC autopsy critique, then working class demographic shifts, followed by a critique of cultural relativism, and finally, the video's big final takeaway. Starting with Theme 1, the DNC autopsy critique. This is NERC News' specific take on that post-election report. Right off the bat, the video brings in conservative commentator Ben Ferguson to absolutely tear into the DNC's post-election report. Ferguson characterizes the DNC's explanations as just, well, excuses. He actively mocks the idea that the party simply felt Joe Biden didn't mentor enough. Instead, he asserts the real reasons, the ones he claims the DNC is deliberately ignoring, were Joe Biden's cognitive decline and Kamala Harris just being a weak candidate. The narrative they are constructing here is one of total, deliberate denial by the political left.
And Ferguson sums up his whole perspective with this incredibly sharp, aggressive framing. He says, "This is not an autopsy, it's a failure report." Wow. The NERC News host fully endorses this, adding that the Democratic Party failed at releasing the report, failed for obvious reasons, and is just completely disconnected from reality. Using that specific language, calling it a failure report, is entirely designed to delegitimize the DNC's internal review process in the eyes of the viewer.
Let's move to Theme 2 and see how this builds. This is all about working-class demographic shifts and claims of shifting voter loyalties. To pivot from the DNC's leadership to the actual voters themselves, the video introduces commentary from Bongino, and he argues that Democrats basically cause their own problems with working-class male voters. He says, "You've spent multiple decades now embedding this critical theory nonsense." Bongino's asserting that the political left alienated their own base by teaching that knowledge is just a construct of power, and by specifically attacking the white male patriarchy. The core argument? You literally can't demonize a demographic for years and then expect them to happily show up for you at the ballot box. The video categorizes this alleged shift specifically among tradesmen, factory workers, and truckers. It claims these blue-collar voters aggressively rejected left-wing lectures and what they call tampon Tim policies. Instead, they actively preferred a candidate who offered a celebration of strength and common sense. The video is explicitly arguing that a media apparatus trying to completely redefine masculinity utterly failed to resonate with the men who physically built the country. Now, what's really interesting here is the hard exit poll data the video cites to back up this cultural argument. They point to Donald Trump gaining 12 points with Hispanic men and 8 points with black men. That is a massive swing, right? Bongino points out the irony here. He argues that the left-wing ethos relies on demanding control over people's money, their healthcare, and their kids. And according to the video, working-class men of all races realized they were getting screwed by big government, and they just walked away from the Democratic coalition in droves.
Moving right along to Theme 3, Critique of Cultural Relativism. This gets into the deeper philosophical argument against the left.
Here, the video uses Fox News host Greg Gutfeld to define what he sees as the core philosophical flaw of the political left, cultural relativism. Gutfeld frames this as an ideology where objective truth is completely surrendered to whatever the mob happens to wish for at the time. The argument is that once a society detaches from objective reality, it basically leaves an unlocked door where any absurdity can just waltz right in and be accepted as truth. And this brilliantly illustrates the classic rhetorical technique of the slippery slope. Gutfeld argues that the initial detachment from truth started with accepting the phrase trans women are women. He then claims that this single concession unlocks a bizarre chain reaction. If you accept that, he argues, well then suddenly 60-year-olds can identify as 40, morbidly obese people are deemed medically fit, horses are people, and, literally, cantaloupes could have rights. The video presents these highly exaggerated, surreal examples to drive home a specific point. Cultural relativism isn't just about one social issue, it is an existential threat to truth itself that forces the public to obey the mob.
The NARC News host then takes Gutfeld's philosophical rant and ties it directly back to the election with this quote: "The trans women are women delusion unlocked every other absurdity in their Marxist worldview." Notice the deliberate use of the term Marxist worldview there. The video argues that abandoning biological reality alienated everyday Americans. Parents supposedly saw it in schools and sports, and working men felt mocked. The host explicitly claims that the famous Trump's they-them ad resonated so powerfully simply because it hit the nail on the head regarding this exact detachment from truth.
Which brings us to Theme 4, the video's final takeaway, summarizing the ultimate NERC News conclusions. So the crucial point is how this video defines the perceived mandate of the 2024 election. And according to NARC News, it wasn't even close. It was a total repudiation of the left. The video claims voters explicitly rejected open borders, record inflation, and a radical cultural agenda. On the flip side, they assert that voters actively chose sanity, strength, common sense, and energy dominance. The host wraps up by saying the DNC's autopsy is just pure hope, and that a clear, undeniable mandate has been delivered to make America great again.
So, we've just walked through what is essentially a masterclass in partisan framing. From using an opponent's quote as a hook, to weaponizing demographic data, all the way to utilizing those slippery slope philosophical arguments, the source video constructed a very specific, watertight narrative about why the election was won and lost. But as we finish up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. How does consuming this kind of highly focused, highly partisan media actually shape our broader understanding of election mandates and our shared political reality? When arguments are constructed this seamlessly, what context might get left behind? Thank you so much for walking through this structured breakdown with me. Keep asking questions and always keep analyzing the media you consume. Catch you next time.